Welcome into another edition of the Future Sox Roundup. My name is Elijah Evans, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host Jeff Cohen. We are a little behind today. We're doing something different. We got a few different things going on. We're going to catch you up on all the latest news, and then we have a really cool interview in the second half of the episode. We're welcoming on Dusty Dellinger, who is a works in the Major League Baseball umpires office, and he kind of does a lot of different things that we're going to get into later, and you'll get to hear just a little bit of the inside of a mind of somebody who works in the managing aspect of umpires around Major League Baseball. So we're going to talk about the automated ball strike system and kind of his job and just the elements of being an umpire in Major League Baseball, which will be a really cool kind of second half of the episode. But first, we're going to start with a little bit of a recap, run through the system, talk about everything going on in the White Sox farm system because there's a lot of good stuff, and we're coming up on draft season. There's a lot of talk about the draft within less than a month from now, and then we've got the trade deadline right after that. So the next 2 months are going to be loaded, and we have a ton to talk about. First of all, Jeff, how you doing today?
Doing good, Elijah. You're right. We do have a lot of talk about some interesting promotions, concerning injury, a couple of hot bats, lot to cover.
Yeah, we got a lot. It's going to be fun. So we'll start here. We'll go through the records of the system. Last week we had RM Layton on, which was a great interview. Everybody should go check that out. That was a kind of a good way to learn in depth about some of the top prospects from a guy who really knows his stuff. But today, we haven't gone through the system and the records in a few weeks now. So we'll start here with the records. Charlotte enters this week at 28-40. It's really just a taxi squad to a degree, right, Jeff? We've talked about this all year. Charlotte is just players are bounced up and down there all the time right now. You go down to Birmingham, 39-24. Great season overall in Birmingham. They still have their ups and downs. Cool to see with Birmingham. Their expected numbers are even higher than their actual record, right? Like that team has a plus 100 something run differential this season. Like they should be even better than that, but they are still leading their division in the Southern League at 39-24. Winston-Salem is 29-34, going down to Kannapolis, who recently clinched the Carolina League title for the first half, their portion of the Carolina League, their division 39-23. Just Kannapolis has been since the beginning, since the first few weeks, right? They've just been unbelievable. They're now going to be a playoff team for the first time since 2018, which is really exciting. Going down all the way to the Arizona Complex League, 11-20 from the White Sox Arizona Complex League. A few good things there, but definitely not the best results so far there. And then the Dominican Summer League team is 3-6 so far, 9 games into their season. Some good things across the board. Some teams struggling more than others, but generally a lot to like with the White Sox farm. And we've got plenty of stuff coming up that is going to bring even more excitement to the farm system. We'll start here, though, Jeff. We'll start at the major league level. White Sox second-ranked pitching prospect Drew Thorpe made his debut last week and then made his second start of his major league career yesterday on Sunday against the Diamondbacks. Two totally different starts for Thorpe, Jeff. Your major league debut, nerves were running. He didn't even have his best stuff, but only one earned run across 5 innings, 4 strikeouts, pretty solid stuff. We liked what we were seeing from him. The changeup was really sharp. And then yesterday in his second career start, got knocked around. 7 earned runs allowed for Thorpe, not a single strikeout, 5 walks, which is just something we don't see from him ever. So it's weird to see, right? But what is your just kind of general sense of Thorpe's first 2 major league starts now?
I got to tell you, Elijah, I'm pretty busy with Charlotte, Winston, and Kannapolis, and I really don't get to watch
Yeah.
many Birmingham games. I've never seen him pitch on MILB TV, but I did watch his first start in Chicago, and man, that was impressive. That was just
I agree.
it's just great. That changeup is deadly, and he had pinpoint control that game. Yeah, I was just curious to get your thoughts on his second start, which I did not see, but statistically
Yeah.
was a pretty rough one.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch it at all in person. I went back and watched some of the clips yesterday. Like you said, the first start was really encouraging. What I saw from him was a guy that was still clearly a little nervous, but was doing everything he needed to do and was not getting barreled up. He didn't give up a single barrel in that first start. Generally speaking, was just limiting contact, was just doing everything he needed to be doing, right? And then yesterday it was weird. I mean, the pitch mix changed a lot. He threw over 50% fastballs yesterday, which is just not the type of pitcher he is. That's what confused me about that start was that I just don't. This is a guy that you're gonna need. He's gonna need to mix and match everything, right? Like he needs to be the guy that is heavy with that changeup. He's mixing all 5 pitches in at different times, and he's confusing hitters, right? Like that's what Drew Thorpe needs to be to succeed. And yesterday, it just didn't look like he was being himself, honestly. And then that's what kind of confused me to a degree. I was like, I want to see him really lean into who he is as a pitcher. And it didn't feel like that's what he was doing yesterday. And that's something where I'm just like, I don't love that, right? Like I want him to be a guy that doesn't throw the fastball more than 35%. He's not going to be able to get away with it more than 35% because it is low 90s, right? And it's not a ton of movement on it. And it's all about the location for him. So, it wasn't great. Am I super worried? No. I think it's just going to take some time. He's, again, this is a pitcher who he relies on confusing hitters and mixing and matching and just moving things all over the zone. Yesterday, he didn't have his stuff. He didn't have his command. He had 5 walks. We've never seen that from him in the minor leagues. I don't think he's ever walked more than 3 hitters in the minor leagues, honestly. That's something completely foreign for him. So I think you need to see a little bit, more command, and he just needs to figure out what pitches he's going to use and when he's going to use them. And kind of as he grows, it's going to be a learning process. This isn't a pitcher who I think is going to dominate right away, but I'm not worried about Thorpe. He should be in the rotation all season. I don't really care what happened yesterday in terms of his long-term outlook, right? We'll see. I want to give him like 5 starts before I start to really make true assessments on what we've seen from him so far.
Right. Now, the other prospect who was in the rotation in Chicago is Jonathan Cannon, and he's been really effective so far.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, Cannon, he came up initially right at the same time as Nastrini. He had a good first start and then a really rough second and third start. Since he came back up, Cannon looks good, man. I mean, he looked really good. His last start, right? This past week, he threw 7 innings of 1-run ball with 7 strikeouts. I mean, he was excellent. So Jonathan Cannon, for a guy that, doesn't have the same prospect pedigree as a Thorpe or even as a Nastrini, right? Like, he looked really solid. He came back up. He pitched out of the bullpen his first game after coming back up. Looked good. Didn't give up a run in 3 innings. Then makes a start 5 days later and gives up 1 run across 7 really, really good innings. So exciting stuff from Cannon. I'm looking forward to seeing kind of where things take him because he looks good. He looks like someone who, could belong in this major league rotation. And both Thorpe and Cannon, in my opinion, should stay in the rotation. There's no reason for them not to. Yep. We'll see what happens when Clevenger comes back from injury, right? I mean, that's whatever, right? Yeah. That's what we keep saying. Like, I would like to see these 2 in the rotation the rest of the season, and I think they both deserve a chance to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, they got to get Clevenger in the rotation and hopefully he performs well so they can move him in a few weeks. But
sure, but yeah, I mean, I don't really think there's any return
but not at the
there,
expense of not at the expense of Thorpe.
Exactly.
And Cannon, maybe at the expense of Flexen.
Sure, I'm fine with that. I don't. We're too late. It's the middle of June, Jeff. Like we're a little over a month out from the trade deadline. Right now, Mike Clevenger's not getting anything in the trade market. So what is the purpose? I don't really think. No matter what he does over 3 starts in July, I'm not really sure that changes anything. They couldn't get anything from him last year when he was pitching well, and he hasn't even pitched well this year. So it's like I don't like. What is that doing? I don't know. I think the White Sox have trade chips right now. That's the thing. Like they have. You look at a Luis Robert and a Garrett Crochet, and even if you don't want to move those guys or if nobody meets the offer for those, you still have an Eric Fetty and a Michael Kopech and a few other relievers, right? Like they're Tommy Pham, right? Paul DeYoung. I mean, there's guys that are going to get a return at the deadline. Yeah. Why are we forcing guys who probably won't even get anything other than maybe one little flyer, right? Like best case scenario for Clevenger or Flexen is you get one little flyer for them. Like I'd rather just give that month of innings to a Thorpe, to a Cannon, whatever that might be, right? So it's fine. It is what it is. But I think these two both mixed results, right? Thorpe has a really rough game. Cannon had a really good game, but they both have shown me that they deserve a chance to stay in this rotation.
And I know you're pretty disappointed that 2 other young guys, Leisure and Nastrini, were sent back to Charlotte.
Yeah, so Jordan Leisure and Nick Nastrini, both that from that Dodgers trade, both guys that we've had on the show before, are both heading back to Charlotte, both back in Charlotte pitching there now. It's tricky. There's give and take, right? Like I get what's happening. Nastrini has not pitched well. Like he's pitched at the major league level. He did get a handful of starts. Since getting recalled, he's made some starts, right? What did he get? I think he got 4 starts with the White Sox since getting called back up, and did not look great. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? I think shout out to our guy Dylan, who I think Dylan's going to be writing a piece on this soon, I believe. But Dylan Barnos at Future Sox, he pointed out to me, sent me a few videos of how Nastrini's release point on his breaking ball versus fastball is drifting right now, and you can see that his mechanics are just a little bit off, and he doesn't really look comfortable to the point where he's not releasing those pitches at the same point with his arm angle, which obviously is trouble. Generally speaking, in Major League Baseball, if you're releasing your pitches at a different point, you're going to be in trouble, and hitters are going to pick up on that, and you're going to get hit pretty hard. And that's what's happened with Mastrini. In addition to just not being able to command the fastball, and that's the biggest thing with him is when he can't locate his fastball, he gets really reliant on those off-speed pitches to the point where they just become predictable. And it's just easy to kind of pick up on that pattern, right? So, but the weird thing for me is like he had his best start in a month, and then he goes down. I just, the timing of it confuses me. I get it because it was for Thorpe. And in that case, I can understand that, right? But at the same time, it's this weird thing with the White Sox where they decide to bump guys down right after they do well, and it wasn't great. That one start wasn't great. He had 5 walks in that last game with the White Sox, but he only allowed 1 run across 4 and a third innings and 5 strikeouts as well. So it's tricky. It's going to take some time. I think Mastrino will be back up after the deadline. There's no reason he shouldn't be back up. It just has been an unfortunate rookie year for him, up and down. He struggled when he's been in Charlotte. He struggled when he's been in Chicago. It just hasn't been pretty for him overall. I still really believe in the stuff. I really do. I think he's going to get a shot the rest of the season, later in the year in the rotation. And then, if it's still not working, maybe you look at him as a relief pitcher next year, potentially. I don't think you want to do that yet, but I think his stuff is going to play at the major league level. It's just about figuring out how it's going to work. And then the other side, Jordan Leisure, that one just confused the heck out of me, Jeff, to be honest with you. Yeah, he gave up a grand slam, like a walk-off grand slam against the Mariners a few days ago. Yes, he hasn't been great in June, but this is a guy that had a 2.31 ERA in all of May, in a bullpen that's frankly terrible. He was still, even with his recent struggles, he's still one of the 2 or 3 best options in the bullpen. I get maybe you want a little more strikeout stuff from him. You want a little more flair from him, right? Like with his stuff, his fastball slider, it hasn't played as well as you'd hope it would have in his first 2 months in the big leagues. But the bullpen's terrible, and relief pitchers, like what is a relief pitcher learning in Charlotte? I mean, it's a park where the ball gets out no matter what, and there's not, once you're an MLB reliever, like, and you have the stuff to be, like, there's really not that much to learn in the minor leagues, and I don't get it from Leisure. What was your take on that kind of?
Yeah, that one stunned me. Nastrini, I mean, not even though I didn't like it, I understand it. He's been struggling, and
same.
especially based on what you said, he really has to come back to Charlotte and tweak his mechanics. But Leisure was doing just fine, and I mean, my gosh, I mean, Kopech himself was blowing late games left and right. So if you got a problem with Leisure, just take him out of the high leverage situations, bring him in the 5th and 6th inning, and let him work his way through these issues.
Yeah, I don't get it. I think with relief pitchers, and you look at the bullpen, I mean, what the White Sox bullpen is atrocious, right? Like the bullpen up top to bottom, it hasn't been good, and Leisure's still been one of your better arms out there, even with his recent struggles. So it's like, I'd rather, like you said, I'd rather just let him work in lower leverage and see what happens, but it is what it is. They'll both be back up later this season. I really do believe in both Leisure and Nastrini long term. I just think it's growing pains, and it's tough, and it can't be easy to pitch on a team that has under 20 wins in June, right? Like that's, and I know we can't make excuses, but like it's a hard situation to go into and pitch and play as a rookie in general.
Right. Then the last guy, or the next guy who is a potential starter in Chicago this year is Sean Burke. We talked about he got off to a great start, his first start, and then he's had a couple of rough ones, but the Knights are back in town this week, so hopefully I'll get a chance to watch him in person. Hopefully he'll bounce back, but couple of rough starts for him.
Yeah, it's learning, right? I mean, Burke, it's like, yeah, it was exciting to see him in his first start in Charlotte look really good, right? But at the same time, like, he's coming off of a significant injury. It's been a little while. Like, I'm not expecting him to be a perfect immediately, right? Like, it was great to see him throw 8 strikeouts in that first start, but then the last 2 starts, 2 runs and 3 runs respectively, 4 strikeouts, then 3 strikeouts. Like, he's not getting blown up, right? But at the same time, he's got to get back in the rhythm of pitching every week and pitching at a high level in AAA, right? Like, he went from Arizona in the rookie league immediately to AAA. So that's like, they didn't bother putting him through Winston and Birmingham because we've seen him succeed at as high as AAA in the past, right? But like, it's going to take him some time. I still think his stuff is lively. Do I think with the depth right now in the situation that Burke is a long-term starter? I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I can see kind of with some of his command issues, I could see him being a really good reliever. I mean, that fastball curveball can definitely play at the highest level. So I think there's a lot to like with Burke. I just think you got to give him some time. Let's give him a full month in Charlotte to really settle in, to find his groove. And then from there, we can look at him and post deadline and say, this is a guy that should get some innings at the big league, whether it's starting or relieving, whatever that may look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Then the last move was Duke Ellis, and I think most people who've been following the White Sox know that he was promoted from Birmingham to the major league club, and he got in a couple of games, and then he was then they DFA'd him, I believe. So we just
Yeah,
wanted to
they
get your
did.
thoughts on all those moves, and if they surprised you at all,
Yeah.
if they make sense to you.
Yeah, I mean, Duke Ellis is tricky, right? I think it's like he's a fun player. His speed is unbelievable, and you saw that in the few games in Chicago. Ultimately, he's probably not a big league player. I think at least right now at this point in his career, I don't think he's a big league player. I think he was really there because Benintendi was out and because Pham was out. Like it was more of a let's spice things up and let's get a speedster in there and see if he can steal some bags and change the course of the game a little bit here and there, right? But he's not a big leaguer right now. I mean, you see him; his numbers in Birmingham are pretty pedestrian this season. So I don't think I think he'll clear waivers. Hopefully, I know he got DFA'd yesterday. I'm hoping he clears waivers and returns to Birmingham or even Charlotte, maybe. Right? Like
Yeah,
let's see it in the minors a little more. But ultimately, this is a guy that like speed is great. He plays some good defense in the outfield. I don't know if the hit tool of the bat will ever really become impactful enough to be a big league player. But I hope he stays in the organization. Definitely, he's a fun player to watch. That's for sure.
and
And then
I'm
yeah, no,
There's
go ahead.
one stat about him that I want to point out. I was doing a little research when they DFA'd him, and I saw that in his minor league career, he's 117 out of 133 stolen bases.
Oh,
So,
that's crazy. That's
yeah,
ridiculous. I mean,
not enough for a ticket to the major leagues, but still pretty impressive.
that's pretty nuts stuff right there for sure. Um, but no, I mean it's exciting. But moving beyond that, we got an injury to talk about. This one's unfortunate. I wish we didn't have to talk about this, but Grant Taylor is has looked really good. We were talking to Arm about him last week. Like this is a guy that we're incredibly excited about. Goes down with an injury. Sounds like it is nothing too serious, but at the same time, it's a little troublesome because Taylor was off to such a good start coming off of Tommy John. Has looked incredible this season, touching 90 plus, right? 99 this season. I think he hit 100 many different times this year. So Taylor is someone that we're excited to see, and now he's going to miss some time. How are you feeling about that? How concerned are you, Jeff, from hearing the news about Taylor's injury?
Well, he's such a high upside pitcher, maybe one of the top two or three in the system. So it's very alarming, of course. And again, Kannapolis is home this week, so I hope to get up there and maybe find out a little more about what's going on. But you're like you say, he's coming off the IL, and hope what they're saying is true, that it's just mild and he'll be back soon.
Yeah, that's definitely the hope for sure. I think he'll be all right. It sounds like it's a lat strain of some sort, right? So they're gonna be careful though. That's the thing. Like you don't want to rush this guy. There's no reason to try and push him back. I'm not sure if he pitches anytime. I don't know in the next month or two, just because there's no need to. You got to be patient with him. There's no reason to try and push your luck with him. But I think at the same time, like this is a guy we're pretty, we're pumped about. So I'm not worried. Should be fine. Let's give him the rest he needs, and I hope to see him back out there soon. Heading down to Birmingham, going to that level from now. Per usual, dominance, right? That starting rotation is just unbelievable. We love what we see from them. The recent addition to that rotation, though, that I want to mention is Tyler Schweitzer, who we were, when we were speculating that Thorpe is probably due to get the promotion soon, it was like, oh, who slots in though? They've already brought up Noah Schultz, so they've got that 5-man thing working, but they're being really careful with Schultz. They're piggybacking him with another starter every week. So in general, it was like, who's going to take the spot? In Winston, there wasn't anybody really excelling. But Tyler Schweitzer had a really good few starts prior to the Thorpe call up, and gets the call as an older guy, as a guy with a little bit more experience than some of that Winston rotation. And what does he do? He just absolutely shoves to start his Birmingham career. I know you're a fan of Schweitzer and have been for a while. What if you kind of does this make sense for him to be in Birmingham already? And he clearly looks like he can handle it.
The last time I saw him, I think I saw him like 2 or 3 weeks ago in Winston, and I think he also went 7 innings that game, just like he did in Birmingham. I mean, his last 3 or 4 starts, both in Winston and Birmingham, have been excellent, excellent.
Yeah,
I mean, in this
yeah,
start, 2 hits and 1 walk and 8 strikeouts.
yeah.
It's insane.
against a pretty good Pensacola team too. Not a team that has struggled really. A team that's been pretty good at the Double A level. So it's great to see. I mean, it's just the pitching. The pitching in Birmingham is unbelievable. It's almost like guys get there and they just become even better than they already were. And Schweitzer's a talented guy. I mean, you look back at he got lit up pretty hard on May 1st. And since then, he's made 6 starts, 5 being in Winston, 1 being in Birmingham, has allowed the most 3 runs in any of those games, has max 2 walks in any of those games, 1 or 0 in most of them. He's been really good since the beginning of May. I mean, he started his season a little bit shakier, but really over the his last 6 starts has been excellent in general, and now is in Birmingham and looks like he can handle Birmingham. Beyond that, in Birmingham, the rest of the rotation still continues to shove, right? They continue to dominate top to bottom. Noah Schultz got hit around a little bit in the first inning yesterday, but then immediately settled in. Everybody's been good, right? Mason Adams with another really solid start this week, gave up a few runs in 1 inning, but a bunch of ground balls. Kai Bush was excellent yesterday, threw a 7-inning shutout yesterday before the game went into extras and they ended up losing, but just really exciting stuff. And the one guy I want to mention particularly, Jeff, is Jake Eater. I've kind of been watching the last Jake Eater start. I tuned in and watched the majority of. I was able to catch kind of the majority of his last start, and oh man, Jake Eater looks a lot more like the Jake Eater that we were hoping to get last year, and a lot less like the Jake Eater that wasn't healthy last year. So this is a guy that I know I like what Kai Bush is doing, and I like what Mason Adams is doing. But when I look at this rotation beyond Noah Schultz, I still see Eater as the second highest upside arm behind Schultz in that rotation right now. I think it's not he's not as polished, and he still has some issues and some things to work out. But Eater now, his last 3 starts, what is that? 25 strikeouts across his last 3 starts. 2 walks in each of those 3 starts, right? So the walks are still higher than you'd like, but they're coming down and they're getting to a reasonable rate. Like, you can get away with 2 walks a game. When you get to that 3-4 point where he was earlier this season, then you're in trouble a little bit. But 2 walks in each of the last 3 starts, at least 7 strikeouts. He struggled against Tennessee in one of those games where he just got hit around a little bit. But 2 of his last 3 starts, right? When you look at those starts separately, right? May 31st, and then this past week on June 13th, 6 1/3 in that first one, 3 hits, no runs, then 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 run on a solo homer, 10 strikeouts, 8 strikeouts in the one before. The stuff is playing with Eater. It's not perfect, but I'm really, really intrigued and excited by what I've seen from him in the past month or so.
Yeah, definitely a different guy than last year. Definitely the guy the White Sox thought they were getting when they traded for him. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this we've had about, I think the season has gone on about 10 weeks now. So the minor league starters have all had about 10 starts. And, based on what we've seen from Eater and Bush and Adams and Iriarte, they're all just trending up. It's just so exciting.
Yeah, a few rough starts from Jairo Iriarte lately, but generally speaking, not worried about that. I still am very encouraged by him all season. Just good stuff. That rotation is phenomenal. Before we move on to the lower levels, we got to move things along here, but I do want to talk about Mr. Edgar Quero, Jeff, Mr. Edgar Quero. Like, this is the guy. It's funny to see because he's been a little streaky, right? Edgar Quero had a really rough month of May, but now we're seeing in June what we saw in April and even better. So we saw him start the season hot. He had a rough stretch throughout May, and now we see him, in June, just tearing the cover off the ball. His last 12 games for Quero, last 15 days, so since the second day of June, Quero has a 1234 OPS, 4 home runs in that stretch, only 7 strikeouts to 5 walks, 9 more RBIs. He still leads the Southern League in RBIs, 18 hits across those 12 games for an on-base percentage just under 500. It's just been unbelievable to watch Quero, and I think he's gotten to the point where, we got to consider him being in Charlotte this year, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got an easy quiz for you, Elijah. This one, I think you can do this in your sleep. Over the last 30 days, 4 Birmingham hitters are hitting over 300. Who are they?
Wow. 4 over 300. That's pretty good stuff right there. Right. Quero's going to be one for sure. He's been unbelievable. Tim Elko has also been excellent in the reigning past few days. He's just been phenomenal, really, all, throughout. Tim Elko, we got to give Tim Elko credit as well. Before I answer the rest of this question, after a rough April, and it was kind of oh, is this guy just kind of capped out in Birmingham? Is he going to reach that? He has been phenomenal. I don't know what is he hitting in the last 30 days? It's got to be really 3 something.
Oh my gosh, 358.
There you go.
Yeah.
Elko has been exceptional. Brooks Baldwin has to be one of those as well.
Yeah.
Brooks Baldwin, even though he's for his standards has slowed down moderately compared to what he was doing earlier this season, has still been just really good all season. And then I'm gonna go Jacob Gonzalez. I think,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. He's been on fire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jacob Gonzalez has also been great. So those four have been excellent. Wilfred Veras has also been pretty good. He's had a few big home runs lately. Still some ups and downs for Veras, but that lineup is fun. That lineup, those four have
Yeah.
definitely been great. Gonzalez is someone that we talk about it many times. Like this is a different player than what we saw last year. He made a lot of adjustments this offseason, and he looks like the first round pick that the White Sox drafted last year, and looks better than I expected him to be honest, at this point in his career. So really exciting stuff from that lineup, led by Caro of late, but Caro, Elko, Baldwin, Gonzalez all hitting really well at the top of that lineup. Veras as well has been solid. So exciting stuff. That Birmingham team is really fun, and most of those guys are going to be 2025 big leaguers probably, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know we need to wrap up here in about a minute, so I'm going to
we got 5 or 10. We're good.
Okay, I'm going to rapid fire just a few shout outs for some guys who are doing really well.
Yeah.
One of them is Tommy Vale, who stepped into the rotation to fill in for Grant Taylor, and his first start, 5 shutout innings. So shout out to him. Also in Kannapolis, a red hot bat now that he's out from under Galaney's shadow is Caden Connor. And he's hitting 306 for the year, 383, 443 slash line, having a strong year. I also want to shout out to Lenyn Sosa, who looks like he's getting comfortable in the major leagues.
I was going to say, we're going to have to take some time next week to talk more about that and see where he's at next week. Because Sosa, I made a post about him a few days ago on Twitter. He looks like he's really finding his groove in the majors. But we'll stick with Winston and Canny for now, though. In general, those guys are all important to mention. Caden Connor is someone that has been good all year. I did a great interview with him. It was cool to get some insights from where he's at in his career. He should be in Winston, right, Jeff? I think that's pretty fair to say. I think this is a guy who played college for 4 years. Like he should be in Winston soon. I think same track as Galaney to a degree, where like I just don't think he really has anything left to prove in Kannapolis. He's facing guys 2-3 years younger than him. Like, let's get him up to Winston. Generally speaking, though, you're right. There's a lot of good arms. There's a lot of guys that have been thrown well. Billy Seidel was also promoted this past week. Went from Canny to Winston. Has been a great bullpen arm all season. And Canny, like we talked about, there's a lot of guys in Canny that have been pretty strong at the bullpen there. And now Seidel will get a chance in Winston as well, where they could use some more pitching reinforcements. Across the board, though, pretty good stuff there for sure. Anybody else from Winston?
I think you wanted to talk a little bit about Samuel Zavala.
Yeah, Zavala is worth mentioning as well because Zavala, highly regarded prospect, exciting piece, right? We've talked about him all season. Like we like him, but he's had a rough start to his season. But at the same time, Zavala is starting to pick it up a little bit, and not necessarily with the impact at the bat to say that, but he's getting on base a lot. Zavala over his past 15 days has a 500 on base percentage due to 14 walks across those 12 games. 14 walks in 12 games, only 7 strikeouts, stealing some bags, getting some hits. It's good. It's been good from Zavala. It's fun to see him start to kind of figure some things out. I think this is a guy that's still really young, 19 years old. He's got plenty of time. He's at high A already, as a 19-year-old. Like he can be there all season, and we still have time to give him, to see if he figures it out even further. But really good stuff from him the past few weeks, at least. He looks like a better player in June. He looks more comfortable. He looks like he's taking better at bats there. So good to see Zavala start to kind of tap into some of his upside there, because we're really high on him, and I think he's the highest ranked prospect probably in that Winston lineup, right? So even though he's only 19 and he hasn't been great this season, we're starting to see a lot of the signs of Zavala, what he did last year when he was with the Padres organization still.
Okay. And then the other guy in Winston who just got promoted from Kannapolis is Ryan Galaney. Got off to a little bit of a slow start, but it's worth pointing out he had 2 home runs last week.
Yeah, he's starting to look more comfortable. I think it's only a matter of time for Galaney. We saw what he was doing in Canny. He was the best hitter in all of single A baseball to start the season. And now he's in high A. Give him a week or two, and now he's starting to find that groove, tap into that power a little more. I think Galaney will continue to hit there and tick up even a little bit. And should be, there's other guys in that lineup as well that should kind of join him in that trajectory too.
Well, Elijah, I got 1,000 more questions for you, but I guess we'll have to hold until next week.
We'll do a few more. We got a few more minutes before this interview with Dusty, so we can do a few more. What else you got from those lower levels?
Well, I wanted to get your thoughts on Peyton Paulette. Have you seen him yet this year? I have not.
Yeah, I've watched a few starts of his. I didn't watch the last one. It hasn't been great for Paulette. I think this is a guy that we were really excited about coming off of last year. He looked healthy towards last year. Right, last year was all about getting him healthy, getting him in his routine, and now it's just not quite clicking for him. The command isn't there. The stuff isn't quite what we thought it would be either. To be honest, I mean the fastball was really lively when he was coming out of college, and the assumption was always that it would kind of get back to that point. Unfortunately, it just isn't moving quite enough. The walks are really high. He's not generating the whiff we kind of hoped he would be generating at this point in his career. So it's tricky. I still am excited about Paulette. I think he could be a piece, but this is kind of feeling almost like a lost season at this point. I'm hoping it's not that case, and I'm hoping he can start to figure some things out. But Paulette is a guy that I think next year you could be looking at as a potential move to the bullpen and seeing what happens from there. It just the command hasn't come around yet, so we'll see. It just you got to throw strikes to be effective, especially at the high A level. Like this is a guy that should be able to throw strikes on a regular basis, and just hasn't gotten there. He got pulled in the first inning of his start this past week, so some good games here and there, right? Like I guess he had a pretty good stretch the last 3 games before this past week. The command wasn't great, but he had 1 run, no runs, 1 run, 3 starts before this past week, and then gets pulled in the first inning. So it hasn't been great, but I still think Paulette's going to get starts the rest of the season, and we'll see if he can progress from there.
Yeah. Yep. Sounds good.
Yeah. Canny, just to more mentions there generally, like that roster is incredible. Shout out to Kannapolis for clinching that division title for the first half. Up and down, it's been exciting. George Walkow is a guy worth mentioning, right? Like it's hasn't been great. This is a guy who's 18 years old, and it's going to take him some time to find his groove. I think most people thought he'd be in Arizona pretty much the whole season, and he's been in Kannapolis already now for 2 weeks, and he hasn't played every game necessarily. But with that said, a lot of strikeouts and definitely a lot of whiff for him, but 2 home runs already for Walkow, both of them that were absolutely clobbered. So I'm excited. It was cool to see that a week ago or whatever that was when he hit his second home run that was just demolished, and it was like, wow. So we've seen the upside with him. He's going to be there all season. We'll continue to see him progress throughout the year, I'm sure.
Yeah, we know that both Wolkow and Ryan Burrows are both really highly pedigreed prospects, and they'll figure it out and they'll get going. They're just off to a little bit of a slow start now, but it'll click.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we are going to take it away to this interview with Dusty, who is going to give us some insight on MLB, the world of umpiring, and all this other stuff. But we'll be back next week for a full, breakdown. We're going to go even further in depth throughout the whole farm system. It's been a little while since we've really done, every single level throughout the whole roster type of thing. So next week will be more of a dive into the entire farm system. We'll talk about some ACL and DSL as well, get into some rookie ball type stuff next week as well. But for now, we're going to turn it over to our interview with Dusty. We are now joined by Dusty Dellinger, the Senior Manager of Umpire Development for Major League Baseball. We are super excited to have Dusty on just to talk a little bit about the world of umpires in baseball, how the ABS system has worked, and everything in between there, just about his work and just the baseball side of things. So welcome, Dusty. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate you taking the time.
So, Elijah, Dusty and I are often sitting together in the Charlotte Knights press box. I've gotten to know Dusty. Whenever there's an umpire question or controversy, everybody in the press box turns to Dusty. But I also just, any chance I get, I quiz him about his job because it's so fascinating. And at some point I said, we got to get you on the podcast. And this is good stuff. People will be fascinated to hear what he has to say.
Definitely. I'm excited to hear what he has to say because I've heard from you a bunch of interesting things, but this is it's a hot topic, right? I mean, Major League Baseball, a lot of people have varying opinions on umpires and whether it should all be automated or partially automated or whatever all that means, right? In addition to the fact that you've been doing this for a while and you know kind of how the world works. So first of all, Dusty, what is your kind of your life path? Where did you, how did you get into this world and where did you start from there?
Yeah, it's crazy how people get into the umpiring profession. Like most of the umpires, we have a playing background. I had the opportunity to go play D2 baseball, and quickly, my sophomore year, I'd gotten hurt, and I was sticking around for summer school that year, and this gentleman came out and asked if I was interested in umpiring Little League. So I was like, I think we were getting at that time like $15 a game. There was a time limit, and I was like, man, I'm getting paid to be out here on the field, and I just really became fascinated with just that side of the game, learning the rules. I thought I knew the rules coming up. I mean, playing college baseball, thought I knew the rules, and just really became fascinated with the job and the challenge it presents. Right? It's you have to be perfect from day one and get better, as we say in the business, and so I pursued that during my college career. I just kind of made some extra money umpiring, and the older gentleman that I would be umpiring with, they saw that I had a strong passion for it, and they encouraged me to go to umpire school once my college career was over, and I did, and I've been doing it ever since. So I'm starting my 27th year in professional baseball, and I'm truly blessed in the job that I have, and I continue to do something that I've done ever since playing t-ball and transition right into it. So
Nice.
that's kind of how I got my start into professional baseball. So
Yeah, very cool.
And how much umpiring did you do in Major League or minor league baseball?
So I worked 11 seasons, and worked my last 5 years were at the AAA level, and my last 3 years I was part time at the major league, between the major leagues and AAA. So I was a call up umpire. So I worked about 40 games over those seasons, and it was a great opportunity. Loved it. But we were going through a time. I don't know if y'all remember, kind of going back, dating myself a little bit. The umpire, the mass resignation that they employed back in 1999, where there was we had 27. Well, actually, it was 22 umpires had resigned during that failed, I guess, CBA. They were in a CBA negotiation or whatnot, and so anyway, we lost a lot of veteran umpires that year, and by the time that season was over, there was 27 new AAA umpires working at the major league. So we went from a lot of older umpires moving out to a lot of younger ones moving in. So we went from about 2000 to 2009. There was only 4 umpires that were hired, and
Wow.
since 2010, we've probably hired close to 45 to 50 umpires. So you can see that there was kind of a slow period, and I kind of fell in into that period. So after the 07 season, just like players get released, umpires get released, and but they called and told me I was released. But at the same time, they knew my passion, they knew my love for the job, and they offered me an opportunity to work in umpire development as an instructor, evaluator. I didn't at the time. I wasn't really thinking in that way to pursue that opportunity. But after not going to spring training and doing something for 11 years, being married, and I think my wife was she was like, something feels weird here. You're at home in April, so she knew that I was missing baseball, and we talked about it in May of that year, May of 08. I started working in umpiring development, and been doing it ever since. So
Nice. Very interesting. It's cool kind of how that path goes with the ups and downs and, shifting as you go and just kind of taking things one step at a time, right? It sounds like.
Right.
And so once you've been in umpire development, right, what is an umpire, how does umpire evaluation work? Because I think a lot of people have an idea that probably is inaccurate. What does
Right.
it mean for an umpire to be evaluated on a regular or consistent basis?
Right. So, a lot of things, people think it's all about judgment, right? And everything on the field, but it's changed through the years. But when we're looking at how they handle themselves, not only on the field but off the field, there's a lot more responsibility in today's game and how we operate in the umpiring world. There's a lot of administrative responsibilities the umpires have to manage. Their travel, hotels, airlines, getting from city to city. So there's a lot of responsibility that we put on these young men and women to travel and be at the next assignment week after week. And So we're constantly evaluating them in that regards. But then, we're obviously looking at them on the field as well, and how they perform, and how they're progressing through our system. When you talk about evaluation, often things like what are you looking for, right? So I think the biggest thing we look for is just their attitude, right? How are they going about doing their job day in and day out? It's a long season, as you know, baseball's the number of games that we have. So it's a grind. You're working through the summer months. You're working through the heat. Um, so it's really that attitude, that coachability. Do you have that passion? Do you have that drive to get better? So we're looking at their effort, their attitude, their hustle, their mobility, their professionalism, their presence on the field, how they carry themselves. Are they taking charge of situations and handling people? Right. I think umpiring is kind of it's a people business, right? And relationships, and how you can communicate with the players. How can you communicate with the managers? Obviously, we have tense moments during the course of the game. How can an umpire diffuse that? Is he going to be approachable? Is he going to be able to diffuse situations, or is he going to be confrontational and make the situation worse? So these are a lot of the things that we look at. When we talk about situation management, we talk about conflict resolution. Those skills that umpires learn through their time in the minor leagues, and the experiences that they have. Obviously, rules knowledge, knowing the ins and outs of the rules. That's one thing that has changed drastically since my time on the field. Is this all the new rules that we have, right? And I'm kind of the old school. So a lot of the new things, I remember when we talked about putting the runner at second base. I heard that in 2016 at the baseball winter meetings, and I about fell out of my chair. But then after seeing it one year, I was like, no, I like it. It's a great rule, So I really became open minded to a lot of the changes. I was like, look, we got to try this, and I really like the approach that Major League Baseball is taking. They're really getting buy-in from all the stakeholders in the game. The fans, the players, the managers, the organizations, the umpires, everybody involved, the stakeholders. They're really getting complete buy-in, and with all these changes. So anyway, I know that was a lot, but
No, that's great.
There's
That's great
a lot
intel.
of different components that we're looking for
So
when evaluating these umpires.
you say buy-in. I'm curious. I want to poke a little bit at that and get your take on this. But there was a lot of mixed opinions. What was it, a year and a half ago, when the pitch clock and the the amount of step-off rules and all these new rules
Right.
have now been implemented to kind of speed up the game, right?
Right.
What was the initial reaction from the umpire side? Because I think we've heard players I think most players liked it, but I think there's definitely been some players that have said they don't love the pitch clock and other things that came in the last 2 years. What was the initial reaction from the umpires around those new kind of speed rules?
Well, if we go back a little bit, we were actually kind of the guinea pigs with the pitch clock regulations. Started in, I believe it was 2014 or 2015. Now, the regulations at that time, there was a lot of loopholes in those regulations, and I think the players quickly figured out how they can manipulate those regulations. And then in probably 2 or 3, maybe 4 years ago, we kind of recrafted, and it was actually when we had the integration with minor league baseball and Major League Baseball. That one of my first jobs was to work closely with the on-field group with the new regulations that we in fact have today. I was closely involved in the initial regulations as they were formed, so I got to work closely with that group in some of these, trying to tighten up these loopholes of the original regulations to what they are today. And so the umpires, I think they were a little apprehensive at first, but just because we knew where we came from with the initial regulations and the loophole. But once we found that we were tightening things up, and that we were really getting a lot of feedback from the umpires, and how we can make things better. So we were constantly having, probably monthly calls with all the umpires, getting their feedback and like, hey guys, how can we make this better? How can we tighten it up in this area? Where are the players taking advantage of the rules? So we did all that, in that in that first year of the rollout before we rolled it out to the major league. Um, so I think the umpires really liked it because, and then first of all, they saw how quick the games were moving.
Yeah.
The pace was picking up, right? Which in turns obviously has an impact on the times of the games. So they really liked how the flow and the feel of the game. It was actually moving a lot
Definitely.
quicker. There was a lot of the downtime was kind of out of the way. So they had to be thinking a little bit quicker. So the umpires loved it.
Yeah.
Great. Speaking of new rules, let's get into the ABS a little bit and see what kind of feedback you're getting from the umpires on that.
I think the umpires they like it. I think initially there was the technology, right, and there was some changes to the size of the plate, the up and the width of the plate has changed from when we first started ABS. How we determine the top and the bottom of the zone. I think that part of it was where the umpires were kind of most challenged, right? We didn't know exactly if it was how it was going to change and where it was going to be. But I think once the umpires know where it's at, and this is what I tell them in my conversations because we're constantly in the locker room talking about ABS, right? So I know how good the guys are when they have the tool to go back and look at the game afterwards and analyze their work through the new ZE system that we now have at the minor league level. The ZE, the zone evaluation, we've had it at the major league level for many years. Major league umpires can review their work. They can look and find their trends, see where if they're calling a pitch, a little too far off the plate. If they're too aggressive off the plate or not aggressive at the bottom of the zone, they can see their trends. So now we have that tool with our AAA umpires and even our low A umpires in the Florida State League. But I've told the umpires, once you know where the zone's at and you have this tool where you can go back day in, game after game and review your work, you're going to be fine. I had the opportunity when I was working on the field. This was, in the early years of this zone evaluation, it was actually called the QuesTech system back then. It took me about 4 or 5 plate jobs to really find out where I was struggling. I worked through my whole career, and now I'm in AAA, and I'm on this technology, and I can see where I need to make my adjustments. It's just like a hitter, right? And player development has had all these resources available to them for many years, where the umpires have it. And we finally have gotten there. It's been a long time coming, but really excited to see where we go and watch the improvement. We've already looked at some of the numbers from previous seasons, and we've already seen improvements with our AAA umpires this year compared to last year with their accuracy of the strike zone. So again, once we get it dialed in, get the technology completely dialed in, work through some of these little small glitches that we have, I think the umpires are going to be fine. They, for lack of a better word, they like the challenge.
Yeah. That's so fascinating. You just alluded to this, but I think it's interesting to put into perspective that it's almost evening the playing field between players and umpires in a way where players have had a way to reevaluate themselves in their game for so long. And now you have that side of the umpires where they're able to evaluate themselves and work on their craft almost, right? It's almost a practicing mechanism now where it teaches you to be a better at your job, right?
Absolutely. So
in Charlotte, Dusty, excuse me, we have 2 different forms of the ABS. 3 days a week, it's just pure ABS, no challenges. And in the last 3 days, the umpires call the game, but can be challenged by the hitters. Is there a preference there among the umpires?
I think the umpires prefer the challenge system. I think they like the traditional of calling pitches and doing their job. I think they find themselves in those full ABS games becoming a little too relaxed and not as mentally locked in. I think it's a tale of two games, right? You got your first game, because you're working a 6-game series, so your first plate job is full ABS where you're kind of mentally a little more relaxed, where you really have to be spot on for your next one. So we're actually looking to make some changes. I don't know if you're aware of this, but we're going to be moving to all challenge here, not this week, but next week. So we're going to go to all challenges the remainder of the season. And in the International League, we'll be going to 2 challenges, and instead of 3. Pacific Coast League will stay at 3 challenges. So we're going to do some testing there. Look forward to that. I think the fans, I think everybody, all the stakeholders, as I mentioned earlier, really prefer the challenge system. We've looked at the numbers. I think the full ABS actually kind of falls at the bottom. I think if you look at it from challenge system or the traditional umpire call the game, and then the full ABS, I think the full ABS is at the bottom of that. But the challenge system, it just brings a new element to the game. Those high leverage pitches late in the game, it just brings a level of excitement. And Jeff, you and I are there in Charlotte. We've seen it, we feel it, and it's a different element to the game. And I think it's hopefully we'll see where it goes in the future. So.
And from a player perspective, like you said, like that changes the way you approach it at bat. And that's something that we've talked about from a few different White Sox players that we kind of have circled in, that you notice guys that have really good plate approaches, right? Like if you trust your instincts and you know that you're a smart hitter and you can have a really good knowledge of the zone, you don't have to have that approach of, fighting off the third strike, right? Like that's such a common old school baseball thing that you hear of like guys where it's like, you got to fight the pitch if you think it's anywhere close. If you know the zone, you don't got to fight anything. If you know where the ball is, you don't have to think about that, right? So it's an interesting dynamic for players and umpires alike. You just kind of said it a little bit, but what do you see the future of the ABS thing? And I think it's interesting that you like the challenge system. I love the challenge system. I think it's so much fun watching a game and being able to see a guy say, hey, I think that's a ball. But like, where do you see that going in terms of Major League Baseball? Do you see a path to it soon? Do you think it'll be a little bit longer just because of the kind of pushback on it?
It's hard to tell. I think we've invested a lot in the system, and it's showing signs of positive feedback from those stakeholders. So I think I think if as long, and now this is not my area, but if the technical side of it, if that can get locked in, and there's assurance there, I could see this happening pretty quickly at the major league level. Yeah. I don't want to put a timeline on it, but but I think it will definitely be tested, and whether we go into spring training testing it and seeing how it works, but obviously it's proven pretty positive here in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the recruiting part of your job. I was joking around with Dusty, I think last homestand. I said, tell me about the off season. Turns out there really isn't much of an off season because you're out recruiting all the time.
Yeah, well, during the season, we've kind of changed the model again since we've integrated with Major League Baseball. It used to have the traditional; it was kind of pay for play. You had to go to umpire school. You paid $4,000 or $5,000 to go to umpire school, and then you were selected out of your respective umpire school to attend the minor league baseball advanced course. But since we've integrated, Major League Baseball has really invested a lot of money into umpire development, which has been great to see. And now we basically have a 4-week prospect development camp down in Vero Beach, the old Dodger Town facility, which works out great for our training. So that's kind of our home base now for umpire development. And so we do 4 weeks of training there. We'll bring in anywhere from 50 to 60 umpires that we recruit throughout the season. Once a month, we will make stops throughout the United States to different places. We may be at an urban youth academy or a minor league ballpark or major league ballpark. We just wrapped up our second camp out in Las Vegas a few weeks ago. We did our initial April camp in Vero Beach, and we'll be going to Kansas City here in June, Atlanta in July, and St. Paul, Minnesota in August. And we actually did we had a mini camp down in Dominican, recruiting some of our Latin American umpires. A lot of the umpires come over from Venezuela and some other Latin American countries for a mini camp. We had 50 attendees at that camp, and we'll probably have 4 and 5 of those come to our January camp in Vero Beach. So that's where our pool of talent is collected from at these various camps, one day camps or clinics that we do. And then in January, we have our 4-week program. And like I said, we'll have 50 to 60 candidates there. We run them through basically the fundamentals of umpiring. We're teaching rules about half the day, and then the next half of the day we're out on the field teaching the mechanics, positioning, and all the intricacies of umpiring. And so I spent my whole January in Vero Beach at our basically our rookie training program. Once we finish that program up, we rank all the umpires 1 to 50, 1 to 60, whatever it may be, and then we'll place those umpires accordingly based on the number of jobs that we have for the upcoming season.
Very interesting. That's fascinating stuff right there.
Typically, how many do you hire each season? What's the turnover like, and the advancement from level to level like?
Right. So over the last, say, 26, 27 years, we average about 40 umpires a year. Now, since we've had the integration and we've had a new collective bargaining agreement, the minor league umpires have had a collective bargaining agreement since 2001. I know the player development players just had their first collective bargaining agreement, so the umpires have had theirs for some time now. But once we integrated with Major League Baseball during that first year, the new CBA was renegotiated, and again, Major League Baseball has made that investment. They put about $1.5 million more into the program, trying to get the salaries up for the umpires to make this job a little bit more attractive for young folks. And it's paid off. We've seen the numbers, our retention, umpires not resigning. We used to have a lot more off-season and in-season resignations, but now I think the work environment has become a little bit more tolerable. There's still a lot of travel. There's no home games for the umpires, but having the Monday off days and some of the other nice benefits that come along with the job, having your own hotel room, those things, they're attractive for someone trying to get into the business. So anyway,
Definitely. One aspect that I find pretty interesting, just from being a baseball person and watching baseball all the time, how do you negate the factor of team preference, or just hometowns, or wherever it might be, right? Because obviously it's an impartial job. You kind of have to remove that barrier, right? So how do you kind of account for where people are from and how they grew up and teams they ended up cheering for when they were younger and all those such factors?
Once you get into business,
Yeah.
the whole fan part of you, we all grew up, I was a Cincinnati Reds fan, right? I umpired in Cincinnati throughout the minor leagues and worked in the major leagues, and that fan part of you,
Yeah.
just it just leaves you. And that's, I don't want to get too much into that, but you see the good and the bad in individuals, right?
Yeah.
When you're out on the field, we're grown people playing a kid's game, but sometimes the behaviors and all that stuff. So I'll just keep it at that. The fan part of you becomes removed, and the impartiality. I mean, you got to be, I tell the guys that come to school, we talk about our saying is, your judgment may be questioned, but your integrity should never be. So, you got a job to do, and we're under a microscope in today's game with social media, with all the technology, cameras everywhere. So you have to go out there and do your job and do it the best to your abilities.
No, definitely. That makes perfect sense. I think it's interesting you say that, because I've told this to Jeff before, but even in 2 years of doing, prospect coverage, I've already kind of felt a degree of working in the game, pulling away from the fandom side and that passionate side. You become more, focused on your job and the analysis aspect rather than exactly. It's an interesting dynamic for sure.
You guys, people don't realize what a beating you guys take behind the plate, and I know you've told me that a lot of umpires, they're on in effect the injured list for part of the season because of that.
Yeah, we've had a rough go here in the first couple months of the season. We've got 8 umpires that are on our injured list right now. Our medical team and facilities are out in Arizona. So we ship all of our injured umpires. They're out there either doing some rehab or seeing our medical team. But our biggest injury that we have is concussions, right? So we've got, of the 8 that are out there, we have 5 that are in concussion protocol, and some of them have been over 3 to 4 weeks out there trying to recover from head blows. I think about the time when I was coming up, we just didn't have the knowledge of the damage that was being caused by, taking foul balls and fastballs directly to the mask. We knew it hurt, and
Yeah.
it hurt for a while, and you were kind of shaken up, but we didn't know the after effects, that the problems that it could cause. So we've obviously become more educated with that in all sports, and so we take it serious with our medical team and our athletic trainer, who works day in, day out. I work closely with him each day. That's how I wake up, is communicating with him to see what our injuries from the night before and how we're going to fill our holes. If that umpire is going to be out, we're going to have to move an umpire up, or we're going to be able to use a local substitute for a day or two. So we're always analyzing and having to work on logistics and getting umpires different places.
Yeah. Very fascinating. I think that's all we got for you, Dusty. We really appreciate you taking the time. It's super fascinating for me. I think I always kind of wonder about the layers of umpires in the league, and I think fans can be too harsh on them sometimes as well. So
Right.
I know you've probably dealt with that plenty in your time.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
yeah, we really appreciate the insights, and it's super interesting to see and kind of the future. There's a lot of developments on that front of things. So I'm looking forward to seeing where things take us, and it's cool to hear, especially about the challenging system, because I
Right.
love it, and I'm
Yeah.
very much hoping that becomes part of Major League Baseball in the near future. So yeah, really appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully I'll see you out in Charlotte sometime later this year.
All right. Thanks, Elijah. Jeff, good talking to you.
You too.
And,
See you this week.